On the morning of April 5th, 1933, a Manhattan lawyer rocked up to Chase National Bank, asking for his gold back. He'd chucked it in there himself, fair dinkum. It was his, and he had the receipts to prove it. Chase knocked him back, and then the government went and charged him. His gold was never given back to him. You'll hear the whole story in a moment, but just hold on to that image for now. Picture a bloke who thought his property was safe as houses inside the most trusted place he knew, only to discover one morning that it wasn't. Now, 90 years down the track, there's a new asset that its supporters reckon the government can't do that to. They can't confiscate it, can't freeze it, can't even lay a finger on it. They've given it the name Bitcoin. This channel doesn't deal in promises, mate. It deals in the forensic record, the cold, hard facts. So today, we're going to put both these assets through the exact same test. The test that 4 monetary collapses have taught us to ask is this: not which one's better, not which one will make you richer, but which one actually protects you when the system goes pear-shaped. Before we crack on, just a heads up. Nothing in this video is financial advice. This channel just looks at the historical record. What you do with that info is entirely your call. Do your own research and have a yarn with a qualified advisor before making any investment, eh? We're historians here, not brokers, just so you know. The test we've pulled from 4 monetary collapses: the Roman debasement, Spain's silver flood, the 1970s dollar crisis, and the American gold confiscation of 1933. We can pull out 5 criteria that every serious store of value absolutely has to pass. Not just theoretical tests, but historical ones. Test number 1. Can it survive government confiscation? Test number 2. Does it survive when the institutions that support it all go belly up? Righto. Test number 3. Does this stuff hold its value over yonks, like proper decades, not just a few months? Test 4, eh? Can it actually work without you having to trust some other bloke or mob? And for test 5, can you keep it to yourself, like totally private, completely outside the usual financial system? So we're going to put both these assets through the ringer with all 5 tests today, and I'll give you the real facts, mate, not just a bunch of hype, the actual proof. First test up, getting your stuff nicked. Back on the 5th of April, 1933, Franklin Roosevelt put his name to Executive Order 6102. You'd already know this yarn if you've seen the gold confiscation video, but I'll tell you the bit most folks usually miss. There was this lawyer from Manhattan, Frederick Barber Campbell, who'd chucked 27 bars of gold bullion into Chase National Bank. Once that executive order came down, he rocked up back at Chase and asked for his gold back. They knocked him back, so he took him to court. The very next day, the government charged him after a grand jury session that only went for 18 minutes. 18 minutes. That's all it took to charge a Harvard law bloke, just for wanting his own stuff back. Unbelievable, eh? The main prosecutor was a young assistant U.S. attorney, Thomas Dewey, who later had a couple of cracks at being president. Campbell never got his gold back, not a chance. So, that's the go with confiscation when the government sets its sights on gold that's sitting within the financial system. Righto, now for the big question everyone back home is probably already wondering about. What about the gold that wasn't stashed in the bank, eh? Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz reckoned in A Monetary History of the United States, and that's no dodgy gold dealer's pamphlet, mind you. It's the most thorough monetary history ever penned, that only about 1 in 4 Yanks who had gold actually handed it over. Just 1 in 4. The other 3 just sat on their hands. There were no door-to-door searches or home raids afterwards. The government only got their mitts on the gold they could actually spot. The gold they couldn't see just stayed put, right where it was. So here's the first big lesson from 1933. It's not that gold can be nicked, but that it can only be nicked if the system can actually see it. Right then, let's put Bitcoin through the same test. The US government has actually grabbed a fair dinkum stack of Bitcoin. Think the Silk Road, the Bitfinex hack, and that bloke James Jong who stashed a fortune in a popcorn tin under a bathroom floor in Georgia. Every single time, mate, they didn't crack the code. Nah, someone just left the keys on a cloud drive, or had their laptop wide open, or the money trail went straight to an exchange where their deets were already logged. The encryption itself hasn't been busted, right? It's just the blokes with the keys who mucked up. But there's a massive difference between gold and Bitcoin when you look at this, and it's a fair dinkum big deal. Back when the US government was after Frederick Campbell's gold, they had to go and raid Chase National Bank, a proper physical spot, a well-known outfit. If a government wants to put the brakes on Bitcoin, they don't need to go hunting for anything. They can just shut down the exchanges, the payment handlers, easy as. Where Bitcoin hooks up with the everyday economy, they can't nick your Bitcoin if you're holding on to your own private keys. Yeah, that's technically spot on, but it can make it bloody hard, or even impossible, to turn your Bitcoin into anything you can actually splash around. There's a saying in the Bitcoin mob that nails this perfectly. Not your keys, not your coins. Self-custody. That's Bitcoin stashed on a hardware wallet, with the private keys only you know, and it's never been grabbed by crypto means. Gold sitting in a bank? You can see it, they can nick it. Gold buried out the back? Can't see it, they leave it be. Bitcoin on an exchange? Visible, can be confiscated. Bitcoin you've got yourself with a key you've memorized? Invisible, no worries. The way it works is the same, but the actual thing itself is different. Both these assets ace the first test with the same catch. If the government can spot it, they can get their mitts on it. Could be both, could be neither, mate. It all depends on what you do with them. Righto, test 2. When institutions go belly up. Constantine kicked off the Roman solidus way back in the early 4th century. The Western Roman Empire went bust 150 years after that. But the solidus? It kept doing the rounds for almost 1,000 years. After that, Arab traders started calling it the dinar. And the Venetians? They just knocked it off and called it the ducat. The coin got a new moniker, but the gold inside it stayed the same. Proper physical gold doesn't need any big institution to work its magic. No government, no exchange, no internet, not even any power. It's the only asset that's never, ever, in all of recorded history, it's never hit rock bottom. Not a single time. Not anywhere on the planet. Bitcoin, she actually came about because the big institutions all went bust. Satoshi Nakamoto. He dropped the Bitcoin white paper in the Arvo of 2008, only 6 weeks after Lehman Brothers went belly up. The Genesis block, which was the very first one ever mined, had a newspaper headline chucked right in it. Chancellor's on the verge of another bailout for the banks, mate. Bitcoin, it was actually designed to fix up exactly the kind of institutional stuff-ups this channel talks about. But here's the real question the evidence makes us ask, mate. Has it actually made it through institutional collapses, or has it just managed to hang on so far? To get the fair dinkum answer, you've got to check out what actually happened to the institutions built up around it. In Feb of 2014, Mt. Gox, which at its peak handled most of the world's Bitcoin transactions, stopped withdrawals and then went belly up. More than 100,000 creditors, their Bitcoin just vanished into thin air. A London developer, Colin Burgess, had all his savings locked up in there, poor bloke. He flew over to Tokyo and stood out in the snow outside the exchange's Shibuya office, holding up a cardboard sign that read, "Mt. Gox, where's our money, mate?" He kept protesting for a week straight until the Japanese police told him to pack it in. Mark Karpelis, the fellow who ran Mt. Gox, was found guilty but got a suspended sentence, meaning he didn't actually spend any time in the big house. In November of 2022, Sam Bankman-Fried's exchange, FTX, went completely pear-shaped. A letter sent to the Department of Justice from one of the victims talked about putting all their life savings into FTX. 3 months before it all went bust, my whole life was completely stuffed. I've got 2 young kids and my wife's doing it tough, suicidal and depressed. Bankman-Fried, in the end, got slapped with 25 years in the clink. Here's what the forensic records actually show us, fair dinkum. The Bitcoin protocol, she's never been hacked, not once, mate. The maths underpinning it, that's still all there, good as gold. Every massive stuff up with Bitcoin, right throughout its history, has been down to the human outfits built around it, not the actual Bitcoin itself. Mt. Gox, mate, that exchange was a shocker, run pretty shoddily. And FTX? Well, John J. Ray III, the bloke who sorted out the Enron mess, reckoned it was a total schmozzle when it came to corporate controls. Basically, it was run by a bunch of galahs who had no clue what they were doing with other people's hard-earned cash. The same sort of difference we bang on about in every script this channel's put out. That applies here too. Bitcoin sitting on an exchange, like paper gold, is fair game for all the dodgy dealings and collapses of the outfit looking after it. But Bitcoin, you look after yourself. Like gold you've buried in the backyard. That's only ever up to you. Gold, it sails through test number 2, no worries at all. The actual asset itself doesn't have some big outfit that can go belly up. It just is, mate. Bitcoin only passes test number 2 with a big if attached. And that's if you're the one holding your own keys, and no one else. The second you chuck them to an institution to look after, you're basically just holding paper Bitcoin, not the real deal. Paper Bitcoin, as Mt. Gox and FTX showed us, is only worth whatever the institution reckons it's worth on the day it all goes pear-shaped. Both of them come with a fair dinkum different set of rules, mind you. Righto, test number 3. How much bang for your buck it gets you over decades. Back in 1930, a single ounce of gold would snag you a top-notch bloke's suit. Fast forward to 2026, and guess what? 1 ounce of gold still gets you a ripper men's suit. And that's not just some spiel from a gold dealer either. This economist fella, Roy Jastrom, He tracked gold's buying power over 200 years, using all the original market info. Now, the ratio isn't spot-on perfect all the time, but the pound and the dollar, they've both chucked away most of their buying power since the gold standard got the flick. Gold hasn't, mind you, but here's the thing the gold fanatics don't always let you in on. Back in '80, everyone was absolutely shitting themselves, so they all piled into gold. Then, bugger me, the price tanked and just kept dropping for almost 2 decades. Imagine some poor bloke or Sheila, middle-aged, who bought gold right at the top to safeguard their super, only to need that cash when they retired. They'd be absolutely gutted. Gold's actual buying power didn't bounce back from that point for a fair dinkum 45 years. Gold's a long-term stasher of value, something for the grandkids, not always a quick 20-year turnaround, eh? Bitcoin kicked off in '09 at a price so tiny, it's a bit hard to even properly explain how small it was. After that, over the years, it shot up more than any other asset ever recorded in finance. But crikey, it's also copped a bigger flogging than almost anything else in financial history too. 4 different times, Bitcoin chucked a wobbly and lost over 3/4 of its value. Not just a slow slide, but a proper wipeout. After that first massive crash, everyone wrote it off, said it was cactus, dead as a doornail. But then, fair dinkum, it bounced back even higher. After the second big tumble, they wrote it off again, but it still came back stronger. Third time, same story. Fourth time, you guessed it, same again. Every single time it went belly up, it was followed by a brand new all-time high. That's Bitcoin's most honest yarn from history. Not about being steady or predictable, but about bouncing back like a rubber band. But here's the real sticky wicket. The purchasing power question that 16 years of data just can't give us an answer to. When Nixon shut the gold window, gold went on a ripper run for 9 years straight. To anyone buying near the peak, it looked like it'd be going up forever. No worries. Then we had 20 years of it going downhill, then a bit of a comeback, then a fresh all-time high. That whole pattern only made sense when you looked back at it. Is Bitcoin doing the same dance? A new type of money figuring out its value on the fly, with some wild ups and downs on the journey. No one's got a clue, not me. Not even the blokes who reckon they're dead certain. Gold's passed test 3 over centuries, no worries. But it can really sting you for decades if you jump in at the top. All because you're a bit spooked. Bitcoin's passed test 3 in its short run, but with a bit of a heads up. 16 years ain't history, mate. It's just one data point. Righto. Test 4. Counterparty risk. This is where the whole shebang, the difference between the asset and who's actually holding it, becomes the main point. If you've got physical gold tucked away yourself, mate, there's no counterparty, none at all. No company can go belly up and nick it, no bank can freeze it solid, no government can digitally undo a transaction, and there's no middleman whatsoever. That's not just some fancy feature of gold, nah. That's actually what physical gold is, by definition. But stuff like paper gold, gold ETFs, gold certificates, or gold sitting in a bank or an allocated account, they've got just as much counterparty risk, fair dinkum, just like any other financial product. Because that's exactly what it is, a financial product. It's just a claim on gold, not the actual gold itself. The big takeaway from 1933 isn't that they pinched the gold. Nah, the real lesson is they pinched the paper claims on gold. The physical gold, the stuff with no paper trail, that was left alone. Old mate Frederick Campbell, he had a receipt, see? And the government, they tracked it down. But the Yanks who kept their traps shut, they stashed their coins and didn't keep any records. So the government, they found sweet bugger all. Right, now let's talk about Bitcoin. The Bitcoin protocol itself. It's got no counterparty, mate. No company's running the show, and no government ever chucked it out there. The total amount of coins is capped at 21 million. Fair dinkum, it's written right into the code. You can't change that number unless most of the whole global network agrees to it. And they've knocked back every single try to do just that. This protocol's been chugging along for 16 years straight, no worries, and not one successful breach. Not a single one. But Bitcoin you've got sitting on an exchange? That's got just as much counterparty risk as paper gold, because it's only a claim on Bitcoin, not the actual Bitcoin itself. MT Gox. That was just a claim on Bitcoin, eh? Same with FTX, that was also just a claim on Bitcoin. And both those claims? They ended up worth sweet FA. Righto, there's another risk, eh? That's just for Bitcoin, and there's nothing quite like it with gold. If you're looking after your own keys, like being your own bank, and you misplace that private key, mate, your Bitcoin's gone for good. No getting it back. Ever. No vault bloke to ring up, no recovery mob, no big boss who can just bypass the encryption. Nah, a fair chunk of it too. Out of all the Bitcoin that's ever been around, reckon about 20% is stuck for good behind lost passwords and keys people have forgotten. Locked up by maths no one can crack, so no one's ever going to spend it. There's this programmer, Stephen Thomas, right, who got paid in Bitcoin back in 2011 for knocking up an animated explainer about what Bitcoin actually was. He chucked the private keys onto an encrypted USB stick, jotted the password down on a bit of paper, then, fair dinkum, he lost the paper. That drive only lets you have 10 goes at the password before it locks up its contents for good. He's already had 8 cracks at it, only 2 guesses left. When Bitcoin was at its absolute peak, that locked-up drive held a fortune big enough to completely change his whole life, mate. He hasn't had a go at those last 2 guesses yet. Just can't bring himself to do it. That's a risk, mate. That gold's never really had anything like it in history. The paper might burn, the vault might get flooded, but the gold's still there, eh? Both these assets pass test 4, but only if you're directly looking after them yourself, no one else involved. They both come unstuck the second some big institution gets its mitts on them. Gold goes pear-shaped if there's a custodian involved. Bitcoin's cactus if there's a custodian or you've lost your key. Right, test 5. Being outside the system, eh? Test 4. That was all about the blokes and Sheilas who look after your asset. But test 5, that's more about the whole setup that lets you actually use the thing. Righto, gold's always been seen as a fair dinkum valuable thing in every human mob throughout history. No worries there. You won't find a single yarn about a society that stumbled across gold and didn't cotton on to its worth. Not one. Gold doesn't need power, it doesn't need the net, and it certainly doesn't need some tech head who gets all that crypto stuff. Bitcoin can't really do its thing without something gold's never needed: permission. Not from a custodian, we've already talked about that, but from the legal and regulatory setup that decides if Bitcoin can actually be turned into anything you can spend. It's all about whether the banks linking it to the dollar economy are allowed to keep going, or if the government in charge decides to keep the infrastructure open or just quietly shut it down. Gold's always been good as gold for payment in every mob throughout history. No government say-so needed, no app, no exchange, no bank account, mate. A coin's just a coin. Its weight tells the whole story, no worries. Bitcoin needs a setup where it's all above board to use it, where the bits and bobs to make it work stay open, and where the person getting it on the other end won't be taking any risks. That last bit is what the US government can pull the strings on without even laying a finger on a single coin. Back in 23, the federal regulators kicked off what the crypto mob dubbed Operation Choke Point 2. Banking regulators gave banks a bit of a nudge, wink, telling them not to bother with crypto businesses. Signature Bank, one of the main banks looking after the crypto industry, got taken over by the regulators, fair dinkum. And then there was Silvergate. The other big bank that was chummy with crypto went belly up that very same week. Just like that. All the ways in and out that linked Bitcoin to the dollar economy just vanished, mate. Bitcoin owners still had their digital dosh, but they just couldn't easily turn it into anything to pay the mortgage, grab some tucker, or sort out a margin call. The coins weren't nicked, the keys weren't pinched, and the encryption wasn't cracked. No worries. They just pulled the plug on the whole system. That's the real Achilles heel for Bitcoin if you're an American with a fair bit of dough. Not some blackout or a foreign government, nah. The very same government that signed off on Executive Order 6102 back in 33 can, right now, make Bitcoin pretty much useless without even taking a single coin, just by deciding which banks can look after which industries. And here is the complication that forces intellectual honesty. In 1933, Americans who wanted to move gold across a border faced something very specific. A meaningful amount of wealth in gold is heavy. It is detectable. Customs agents know what a man carrying serious money in gold looks like, because gold is physical, and physics does not negotiate. Bitcoin's answer to that problem is real. A person who has memorized 12 words can walk through any airport in the world, through any customs inspection, past any scanner carrying no physical object whatsoever. And on the other side, reconstruct their entire fortune from memory alone. No customs agent has ever seized memorized words. Gold passes test 5 for storage. It works in any scenario, in any country with any counterparty. 5,000 years of evidence. But gold fails test 5 for movement. The moment you try to carry serious wealth across a border, physics works against you. The weight is real. The risk of seizure is real. History confirms both. Bitcoin passes test 5 for movement. 12 memorized words cross any border in the world undetected. But Bitcoin fails test 5 when the government removes the infrastructure that makes it spendable. Not by force, but by quietly cutting off the banks that serve it. The coins remain. The utility disappears. Neither asset passes both conditions. Each passes the one the other fails. The question is not which one passes. The question is, which failure can you live with? What the central banks are telling you, There is a signal worth more than any individual's opinion. Central banks have been buying gold at the highest rate since the 1950s, 3 consecutive years of record purchases. And then there is Russia. When the West froze Russia's sovereign reserves in February of 2022, the effect was immediate and surgical. Heaps of billions of dollars, like in digital stuff, shares, overseas cash, and bonds, all got frozen with just one click. The accounts just packed it in, mate. The gold Russia had stashed away in Moscow, every single bit of it, was totally safe because no overseas mob had control, and no one could get to it with a click. That gold's gone up heaps in value since then, too. Those digital reserves that got frozen? Yeah, they're still frozen. Just digital assets stuck in overseas systems. Gold kept here at home can't just be grabbed by a bunch of governments working together without a heads up. A survey by the World Gold Council reckoned almost a third of all central banks are planning to boost their gold stashes in the next year, which is the biggest number they've seen since they started asking. Not a single central bank anywhere in the world has officially taken on Bitcoin as a reserve asset. Not yet, anyway. There's just one odd one out worth a mention and a good look. Back in 2021, El Salvador was the first country globally to make Bitcoin legal tender, meaning everyone had to accept it, and they even had government-backed wallets. It was basically the president having a punt on a brand new money system. 4 years down the track, with the International Monetary Fund breathing down their neck as part of a loan deal, El Salvador quietly binned it. Bitcoin got bumped down from being legal tender to just being optional. That whole experiment only lasted one presidential run. The US has a strategic Bitcoin stash, but it's all made up of coins they grabbed from criminal cases. The Federal Reserve doesn't actually hold any Bitcoin, nah. Central banks keep gold as top-shelf capital, according to the international banking rules, you know. Bitcoin doesn't have that sort of classification, though. The folks who know the most, plan way ahead, and have the most to lose are still going for gold. Fair dinkum. That's just a bit of info, mind you. It's not the final word. The question history hasn't been able to sort out yet is still up in the air. Frederick Campbell had his gold stashed in a vault, but the government found the paperwork and just took the lot. Stephen Thomas has his Bitcoin stashed away, right? He made the password, then he went and lost the bloody thing, so now he can't get his hands on it. So, the fair dinkum lesson from both these yarns, it's the same one. No matter what you're stashing your value in, it's only as safe as the system or the bloke you trust to look after it. Gold, mate. It's seen off every empire, every bit of cash, and every government that's ever tried to boss it around. The solidus coin, that thing kept doing the rounds for yonks after Rome bit the dust. The way gold works, mathematically speaking, it didn't need history to keep it ticking over. Bitcoin's copped a fair few hidings, crashes that would have wiped out any other asset, but it's always bounced back from the lot of them. The protocol itself has never been cracked, but it hasn't seen the kind of stuff gold has. A world war, an empire going belly up, or a government deciding, just like that owning it privately was a crime. Right, here's a question to chew on. Back in 33, the government could grab your gold if they could see it. But what they couldn't see, they couldn't get their mitts on. The government in 2026 won't be able to crack Bitcoin's encryption, but they can quietly pull the rug out from under the infrastructure that lets you spend it. And they've already shown their fair dinkum about doing just that. Both these assets have a bit of a weak spot, the same sort of Achilles heel. For gold, it's being visible. For Bitcoin, it's needing permission. The question everyone watching this needs to figure out for themselves isn't which asset is safer in theory, but which threat they reckon is more likely to pop up in their lifetime. Is it a government that comes knocking for what it can see and weigh? Or one that quietly leans on the banks to stop helping a whole industry, leaving your asset there but making it impossible to spend? History's shown us both sorts, mate, but it hasn't given us a heads up on which one's coming next. So, that's the big one. Cheers for watching, everyone.